Mr. Chairman, I support the amendment, but I want to just welcome our newest member to the committee, our newest members, Mr. Raskin from Maryland, and just respond to the issues he's raised, because sadly, the process he described in the Maryland State Legislature has not happened here. There was not a committee before, there was not a hearing on this legislation before the subcommittee that I'm the ranking member of, which is the Subcommittee of Jurisdiction, and the notion that because this issue was heard 3 or 4 years ago, that should satisfy the requirements and that members should be expected and the public should be expected to scour transcripts and get videos, I think does a disservice to this issue. The majority has raised the suggestion, or made the suggestion, that this is a bill which will help victims of asbestos. And that despite the fact that it's not supported by any organizations that represent victims, despite the fact that it's supported by the industry that's responsible for this, and particularly with respect to veterans, this committee has received an opposition to this bill from the veteran service organizations. And in the bill, they say the reality is this bill only helps companies and manufacturers who knowingly expose asbestos to our honorable men and women who have made sacrifices for our country, end quote. And the sad reality is that the intrusive and burdensome requirements of this legislation are an obvious effort to give asbestos defendants a permission slip to evade the rules of discovery and evidence in litigation for asbestos claims. And that's why a broad coalition of public interest organizations that oppose this bill, including the Alliance for Justice, Public Citizen, and Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization, concluded that the obvious purpose of the legislation is to reward the same companies, as they say, that hid the dangers posed by asbestos exposure, lied about what they knew, fought against liability for the harms caused, tried to change the laws that held them responsible, and to this day fight against banning asbestos in the United States, end quote. So in that context, it's a very different argument than my friend from Texas has made, and a hearing where new members of the committee would have the opportunity to hear from witnesses and to evaluate their testimony would help solve that disagreement. But I think the process is flawed, and I would remind the members of this committee that we have many urgent matters that actually require our attention, not the least of which is this ongoing evidence which continues to be revealed about the persistent influence of the Russians to hack into our elections and to influence the outcome and to exert improper influence on our democracy. Many of us in a variety of different venues have called for hearings, have called for a bipartisan approach to this very critical issue. We can't seem to get a hearing on that. Yesterday, the National Security Advisor to the President resigned because he lied about conversations with the Russian ambassador at the time that sanctions were being imposed for that hacking. There are many issues that are urgent, but this is an issue where we have a broad coalition of people who are speaking on behalf of victims of asbestos who are opposed to this. We haven't had a hearing on it, and I certainly think the gentlelady's amendment mitigates some of the very negative consequences of this legislation. And with it, I yield to the gentlelady from Texas.
Thank the